The first rule of the carrion belt was simple. If something was still moving, it probably wanted you dead. I learned that rule the hard way, drifting through the wreckage of Outpost Helios, 9 with only a cracked visor, a failing rifle, and the echo of screams that refused to leave my head. The station had gone dark 3 days earlier. No distress call. No warning. Just silence where 6,000 souls had once lived. By the time my scavenger skiff docked with a ruptured hull, I already knew the truth. Silence like that never meant evacuation. It meant extinction. The corridors were scorched and twisted, metal peeled open like flesh. Gravity flickered, making blood and debris float in lazy spirals. Alien glyphs were burned into the walls, symbols I recognized all too well. The Virex swarm. Hive-based. Relentless. Efficient. They didn't conquer worlds.
They harvested them.
I moved slowly, every step measured. My suit's power was down to 40%, and my oxygen was worse. I wasn't here to be a hero. I was here because the guild paid well for black box cores and because, despite everything, part of me still hoped I'd find proof that humanity hadn't gone quietly into the void. That was when I heard her. A sound so faint I almost missed it. Not a scream. Not even a cry. Just a shaky breath, repeated again and again, as if whoever made it was afraid the universe might hear them. I followed the sound through a collapsed medical wing, stepping over shattered stasis pods and dried blood. The door at the end was sealed shut, emergency locks fused by heat. The panel blinked weakly, still drawing power from a backup cell that should have died days ago. I pried it open with my last explosive bolt. Inside, the room was dark and cold. A single emergency light flickered overhead, illuminating a woman curled against the far wall. Her skin was pale, eyes sunken, lips cracked. A torn station uniform clung to her thin frame.
Human. Alive.
She flinched when she saw me, scrambling backward until her shoulders hit the wall. Her eyes were wide with terror, but beneath it was something else.
Hope.
Desperate and fragile. "Please," she whispered. "Don't let them take me." I lowered my rifle immediately, hands raised.
Easy.
"I'm human. Name's Erin. I'm here to get you out." Her breath hitched. They killed everyone.
I saw it.
I hid. I've been hiding for days. I checked her vitals with my suit scanner. Severe dehydration. Malnutrition. Shock. But alive. Against all odds. "You're safe now," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. "Can you stand?" She shook her head. So I did the only thing that made sense. I slung my rifle, crossed the room, and lifted her gently into my arms. She weighed almost nothing. As I carried her back through the ruined station, the silence pressed in around us. Every shadow felt like it might sprout claws. Twice we had to hide as Virex drones skittered past, their chitinous bodies clicking softly as they searched for survivors. She buried her face against my chest, fingers gripping my suit like it was the last solid thing in the universe. We reached my skiff with minutes to spare. As the engines roared to life and the station drifted away behind us, she finally allowed herself to cry. I didn't stop her. Her name was Lyra Chen. She slept for nearly a full day after we docked at my long-range cruiser, the Wayfarer. I administered fluids, nutrients, and what little medical aid I could provide. The ship's AI, Mora, did the rest, humming softly as it stabilized her condition. I watched her from the medbay doorway, arms crossed, exhaustion pulling at my bones. I'd been alone for years. The guild encouraged it. Fewer attachments meant fewer complications. But as I stood there, listening to her steady breathing, I felt something stir inside me that I hadn't felt in a long time. Responsibility. When she finally woke, she looked less like a ghost and more like a person. Her eyes were still haunted, but they were sharp, intelligent. "You didn't leave me," she said quietly. "No," I replied. "I promised I wouldn't." She nodded, as if filing that away. "Why?" The question caught me off guard. "Why what?" "Why come back for me? You didn't know I was there. You could have taken what you wanted and left." I shrugged. "Didn't feel right." "That's not an answer." I smiled faintly. "It's the only one I've got." Over the next few days, she recovered quickly, faster than expected. She helped around the ship, learning its systems, asking questions. Always questions.
About me.
About the guild. About the war. About humanity. The Virex swarm had been pushing deeper into human-controlled space for years. Whole colonies vanished overnight. The council talked about containment and diplomacy, but everyone knew the truth. We were losing. One night, as the Wayfarer drifted between stars, Lyra joined me on the observation deck. The galaxy stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, beautiful and uncaring. "She survived because of you," Mora said softly through the intercom. "Statistical probability of survival without intervention, 0.003%. Lyra heard it too. She turned to me, studying my face. "Is that why you saved me? Because it was unlikely?" I chuckled. "I don't gamble on statistics." She leaned against the glass. "Everyone else died. I keep thinking, why me?" I didn't have an answer for that. Sometimes survival was just chance. Sometimes it was cruelty. She was quiet for a long time, then asked the question that would change everything. "Aaron," she said, "why do humans keep fighting?" I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. We're outmatched. Outnumbered. The Virex don't feel fear or mercy. Every logical analysis says we should be extinct already. So why aren't we?" I looked at the stars, memories flooding back. Burning worlds. Last stands. Names carved into dog tags. "Because," I said slowly, "we don't measure survival the same way they do." She waited. "When the Virex calculate victory," I continued, "they count bodies, territory, resources. When we fight, we count moments, people, promises." She turned toward me fully now. "We fight," I said, "because somewhere out there, someone like you is still breathing. And as long as that's true, giving up isn't an option." Her eyes glistened. "But that's not efficient," she whispered. "No," I agreed. "It's human." The distress signal came an hour later. Encrypted. Human military code. Priority black. Mora decoded it in seconds. Message originates from Colony EOS 12. Virex incursion confirmed. Evacuation failed. Remaining defenders requesting immediate assistance. I laughed bitterly. Immediate assistance from who? The ghosts. Lyra stepped closer. EOS 12, that's a civilian world. I corrected. She looked at me, fear and resolve warring in her expression. "You're going to help them." It wasn't a question. I sighed. "I'm a scavenger, not a fleet." "You saved me with one ship," she said. "Maybe you can save them too." I met her gaze and saw something dangerous there. Belief. Against my better judgment, I changed course. EOS 12 was already burning when we arrived. Orbital platforms shattered, debris raining into the atmosphere like fire. Virex carriers loomed in low orbit, their organic hulls pulsing as they deployed ground forces. The human defenders were scattered and desperate. Old freighters retrofitted with weapons. Planetary shields flickering. "This is suicide," I muttered. "Then don't die," Lyra said simply. We dropped into the atmosphere at full burn, weapons blazing. The Wayfarer wasn't built for this kind of fight, but she was stubborn. Like her captain. I coordinated with the remaining defenders, relaying targeting data, jamming Virex communications. We struck where they didn't expect, hit-and-run attacks that sowed confusion in the hive mind. On the ground, civilians poured into evacuation zones, buying precious minutes. Minutes that mattered. Hours later, battered and smoking, we jumped back to hyperspace with a convoy of refugee ships in tow. Casualties were heavy, but EOS 12 wasn't erased. In the aftermath, as the refugees were transferred to safer systems, Lyra stood beside me on the hangar deck.
They'll remember this, she said. Who?
I asked. Everyone, she replied. That humans don't abandon each other. I looked at her, really looked at her. Not as a survivor. Not as a burden. But as a symbol. You asked why humans keep fighting, I said. Here's the rest of the answer. I gestured to the refugees, exhausted but alive. We fight, I said, because even when the universe tells us we shouldn't exist anymore, we refuse to listen. She smiled, a real smile this time. Then, she said, I want to fight too. The galaxy was vast. The enemies were many. The odds were terrible. But as long as even one human could ask that question and another could answer it, humanity wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. And somewhere out there, the Virex would learn a truth they could never calculate. Humans don't survive because we are strong. We are strong because we choose to survive. 3 months after EOS 12, the Virex swarm changed its tactics. That alone terrified the Council more than any battlefield loss. They had never adapted to us before. Humanity was supposed to be a statistical anomaly, a temporary irritation in the swarm's expansion. Something to be erased, not studied. But now Virex probes lingered longer at the edges of human space. Their attacks became surgical, targeted, curious. They were learning. So were we. The Wayfarer was no longer a lone scavenger ship drifting between forgotten stars. She had become a symbol, a rally point. Independent captains, retired soldiers, even former smugglers answered the encrypted beacon we broadcast from deep space. Humans who had nothing left to lose always responded first. Lyra stood beside me on the command deck as the first fleet assembled.
Not a navy.
Not an armada. Just dozens of mismatched ships, patched hulls and jury-rigged weapons, united by one simple truth. We were still here. You didn't just save me, Lyra said quietly, watching the ships align. You reminded people who they are. I shook my head. You did that. I just refused to walk away. She met my eyes, her voice steady. That's the difference, Saren. Most people don't realize refusing to walk away is a choice. The Council finally noticed us after that. They called it the Wayfarer Initiative. Gave us codes, resources, legitimacy. But we never waited for permission. We went where the signals were weakest, where hope was almost gone, and we made the swarm bleed for every inch of human life. Losses came. They always do. But so did victories. And something else began to spread through the galaxy, whispered in alien channels and buried deep in Virex datanets. Humans were unpredictable. Humans did not retreat when logic demanded it. Humans would sacrifice one life to save another, even when it made no sense. Especially when it made no sense. One night, long after the fleet had jumped to its next destination, Lyra and I stood alone beneath the stars again. The same quiet, the same endless dark. Do you ever regret going back for me? She asked. I didn't hesitate.
No.
Even knowing what it started? I smiled faintly. Because of what it started. She nodded, then asked the question more softly this time. The one that had haunted her since Helios 9. Do you think we'll win? I looked at the galaxy, at the scars humanity had carved into something that wanted us erased.
We already have, I said.
Winning doesn't mean the enemy is gone. It means we're still standing. She took a breath, steady and sure. No longer a survivor, hiding in the dark. A human choosing to fight. And far across the void, the Virex swarm recalculated again and again, unable to understand a species that survived not because it should, but because someone somewhere always refused to let another human die alone.
The swarm learned fear that day.
And humanity learned something even more dangerous. We were never meant to go quietly. We were meant to endure.